Very good afternoon. Welcome to the market segment. Asian markets traded mixed. Investor eyes were said to be keenly looking out for tech heavyweight Nvidia results set to come out later today, with concerns around the Fed's independence. The Nikkei share average rose by 0.3%. The Hang Seng Index declined by 1.27%, while the Shanghai Composite Index ended the session 1.76% in the red. US markets climbed on Tuesday, driven by gains in tech and healthcare stocks. Nvidia soared ahead of its earnings results, boosting optimism that strong results could sustain a continued rally. Eli Lilly was also up after its experimental diabetes drug showed substantial weight loss benefits. However, market players were said to have been perturbed about the independence of the US Fed on talk that President Donald Trump wants to remove one of the board of governors at the US Fed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose by 0.3%. The S&P 500 gained 0.41%, while the Nasdaq Composite Index ended 0.44% in the black. Looking at local indicators, we see that the all-share index is currently trading down 0.5% at 101,894 index points. The rand is trading at 17.76 against the US dollar, 20.57 vis-a-vis the euro, and 23.82 against the British pound. Gold is trading at $3,377 an ounce, platinum at $1,344 an ounce, while Brent crude oil is trading at $66.56 a barrel. All right, let's get into it now with Chantel Marks. She's the head of equity research at F&B Wealth and Investments. Thanks very much, Chantel, for joining us. So last week, everyone was focused on the U.S. central bankers meeting. And this week, there are concerns about the Fed's independence as President Trump tries to remove one of the Federal Reserve governors. What else are making, market players think or tick this week?
Well, you mentioned it in your introduction, and I think that it is probably the biggest event of this week, and that is NVIDIA earnings that are set to come out tonight. It's really going to tell us whether or not that AI thematic is continuing as strongly as it was over the last 2 years or so. And really, it's been fueling kind of the US market. It's been fueling optimism around tech, and it's been sustaining gains for investors for quite some time. So a lot is riding on the NVIDIA story. And then the other thing that investors are thinking about, apart from the central bank independence issue, is perhaps what the central bank will do next. Because we do have core personal consumption expenditure numbers that are coming out on Friday, and that is the preferred inflation measure for the Fed. So I think it's going to be very important to see directionally where inflation is going and the consumer inflation basket is going. And that could determine what the Fed will do next.
So the rand is looking a little bit weaker at the moment. What's your reading of it? What's driving it currently?
Oh, well, the rand is a high beta currency, and when you do see some nerviness in markets, the rand tends to react in kind. So it reacts a little bit more than other currencies within the emerging market currency basket. I don't think there's anything further to read into it. Of course, the flip side is also true. When sentiment is positive in global markets, the rand tends to rally. If you look at the rand on a year-to-date basis, it's still stronger. It's kind of middle of the pack in terms of the major currencies. It's in fact a little bit stronger than what we were thinking the rand was going to be at the start of this year.
So a big announcement coming out of education player today, Kuro Holdings, that a trust owned by Yanni Mouton, that is the founder of the PSG Group, is looking to buy up all the Kuro shares, which saw the stock jump by more than 50% today. This is a massive development in this space. What's your understanding behind it? And presumably, if all goes through, it will be a loss for investors, as no doubt there's definitely scope for further growth.
Yes, absolutely. There is scope for further growth. So I would start by saying, addressing your first question, what is behind it? Now, Curo was initially incubated in the PhD group that was founded by Mr. Burton, and I think that they saw a gap in the South African market in terms of private education and really a strong private education brand. They built Curo from the ground up. Of course, spun out Stadio, which is a tertiary institution, at some point. And now the company Curo is growing. Well, it's grown and it's kind of leveled off, but it's a for-profit company. It's listed on the JSE. It has external shareholders. So they are very limited in terms of how they can deploy capital that they have available on their balance sheet. From what we understand, the foundation is looking to turn Curo into a not-for-profit organization so that they are able to reinvest that capital without having to think about external shareholder returns. They view education as a public good, and the expectation is that they'll be able to grow quicker as a private not-for-profit company and address the education shortage, educational institutional shortage that we have in the country currently. So it seems quite noble. In terms of the shareholders missing out potentially, I think the structure of the deal is quite interesting in that regard, because you do get a cash portion, but most of the cash of the consideration will be paid via PSG Capital, PSG Consult shares, so the PSG Financial Services business, sorry, it used to be called PSG Consult, as well as Capitec shares. And both those companies continue to grow very quickly. And it's very interesting that the foundation is basically giving away these high growth shares that are going to deliver profits and returns for the foundation over time, in order to take on this educational cause.
It is incredible. And just for clarity, if they are successful and they manage to get these shares and run Curo on their own, they're basically going to be giving away education. Is that right? Or would people still pay fees? I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
No, I would expect people to still pay fees at Curo, because you still have to run a business there, even though it's not for profit. With not for profit, we just mean that the business is able to take the profits that it makes from specific schools and invest it into opening new schools, paying teachers, hiring more teachers, and improving the facilities over time. So there will absolutely, from my understanding, still be school fees payable.
All right. No, thank you for that, Chantel, for your time and your insights, as always. That was Chantel Marks, the head of equity research at FNB Wealth and Investments.